This talk is written to introduce a class that I'm going to be doing this term, this fall, starting October 23rd, Monday evenings, a class by the same name. And the class actually is full, but I have opened up 2 more places to deal with the flux that goes on in the beginning of things. And if you have signed up for the class and you cannot do it, or you have changed your mind and don't want to do it, please let the office know, or let me know. I'm around most of the time. You can leave a note so that I know how many people. I don't have very much room. We're in the Jizo Hall, and so I really need a certain number of people, or to know how much and who I have. I will be doing this kind of class again, because I don't know who invented it, but I thought it was really a wonderful idea. These community circles, a way to work with difficult material in a personal, accessible, and hopefully an enjoyable way. In this talk, I have brought together the stories of a few of the poets we will be working with in the class. I give you a short excerpt of their lives, who they are, time and place, and their contributions, an example of their writings, which was mostly they wrote in poetic form. These poets are drawn from many traditions: India, medieval Europe, Asia, and America. And I give a relation to Buddhist practice as I experience it. And we are not really studying the life of these poets. The poets stand as a third thing through which we can relate something of our own life and practice. If you are not a poet and you say, well, I'm not a poet, I don't want to do any writing, there will be some opportunities to write in the class, well, then don't be. All you have to do is come and have something you would like to say. Many of the women, and I couldn't use all of them, and some of them were so interwoven with ideas I knew wouldn't be easy, because very Christian ideas. They were very plain folk who just wrote to understand their lives, to understand their predicament, living in a particular kind of society at a particular time. So these are powerful women who stood their ground in untenable circumstances, and many lost their lives. You could just not want to go along with the emperor, and you were fed to the lions. And no joke about this, and many of the women did lose their lives for what we take for granted, decisions that we take for granted. Also, just a warning, words, I don't know what words are buzzwords for you, but things like devotion to Him, God, love, it's fine to disagree, but just notice if these words bother you. Just listen carefully and notice. There are many types of the feminine archetype, many variations of the feminine archetype. I chose to work with ones that I know very, very well, and ones that I feel have fallen out of favor in many ways and are important for traditional, for spiritual work, for both men and women. And so I felt that they were in need of renewal and re-evaluation. So, there are many ways to be feminine, okay? Just so you know, I have a load of lighters in my pockets. Because I'm doing this Jishin, I bought so many lighters to try, because I never used a lighter before. I don't smoke. And I had ones for long, and ones that were with pressing down, and ones with spinning wheels. And anyway, so they're here, and matches. So anyway, just shows you. Anyhow, okay. So the radiant seed, not about her, but through her, is the eye of the needle, the thread of the world's move. When demons are no longer demons, they become our true angels. She who plants a garden within my belly, where I bask in her green, this ultimate and simplicity. This I am a true I, but also an I that sees the leaves, a stem, a lotus, a rose, a peony unfolding, wide and bright like a radiant seed, a sapling of no thing. To become oneself out of oneself. Oneself is all things, is to bless our world and to be blessed, to step firmly upon the ground of unknowing, immersed, absorbed in its abundance, shedding its excess to bring forth ease. This I rests deep in the marrow of her native rhythm. The feminine, poetry, and the sacred. I have wanted to do this talk to string together the lives and work of a few exemplary women, great mystics, spiritual practitioners, and poets, exemplary and few, in the sense that they point us toward our own potential. Not occupying the top of the charts, they ask to be sought out. Their voices echo the centuries, challenging us to cultivate a practice with deepening regard for our own truth. I think we miss aspects of femininity, underestimating her strength and richness, and need to learn better ways of listening to her and to look and listen from the heart of her world. I am not certain we see strength in her receptivity and devotion, the complexity of her yin element, her specific kind of confidence, integrity, and courage, her relationship to her sometimes uneasy masculine traits. There are many ways of the feminine, the deities throughout the different cultures that point us towards her varied excellence. Here, I would like to emphasize the necessity of the feminine archetype in spiritual practice, ways that have been forgotten or lost, in need of renewal. In the Greek pantheon, and I see these deities as qualities, okay? They are not something to believe in. They are ways in which we can look at things in the world and get to know each other that deepen our sense of the substance of things and the substance of our person. Quality which confers uniqueness, distinction, and difference, encouraging a transparency in word and deed, opening us to myriad ways to see and experience the world, and yet more than merely this and that. Hestia of the hearth, darkness, death, the depths of Persephone, Hecate and the Lady of the Labyrinths, Ariadne. In Buddhism, the love, bliss, and eroticism of Dakinis, the compassion of Kuan Yin, and wisdom of Prajnaparamita. I especially want to give some favor to the Indian poets, such as Mirabai, one of my favorites, Layla, the Sufi poet Rabia, the recluse Emily Dickinson, and the Christian mystics. In my own life, I never made the decision to fight for equality as a woman equal to men, as this was never my direction. Instead, I cultivated an internal heritage. I have approached life through imagination. I chose to be an artist drawn towards an essential expression of the feminine archetype. I use the term archetype as manifestation of immediate and living energy. If permitted to be seen and take her rightful place in tradition and culture, can unlock greater intimacy and range of human experience. For so many years, it seemed I had not yet mentally emerged onto the surface of the world. Therefore, I did not feel the overt effect of prohibitions toward women from obvious customs or rules. I experienced an attitude of feminine inferiority, as well as the loss of a more rounded masculine value and purpose, underground, underworld, hidden in the cultural or family dynamics in ways difficult to name. I look back to rediscover seed origins, years gathered as seeds of other and earlier origins. Years ago, I find intimations of somewhat complete insights. Somehow it happens, a tiny darkness, a slight disturbance opens into light and vastness, and yet there is need to give body through years of unraveling, living this life within conditions. It is about our difference and the pain of that difference, also the beauty and quality of that difference. If the feminine meaning and value is seemingly implied and hidden, it is because her life and writings can be profoundly personal and particular, therefore controversial in subtle and difficult ways. What empowers us to hear and stay close to this inner pulse, to move in our own particular direction? And who is it who provides us with the strength to follow the call? And because the soul is shy. Throughout these writings, I find the expression of surprise and originality, of truths formed in her language of color, of flowers, her dreaming, of insects and of wolves. She, like water, like the mountains we enter, walking with the mountains, the trees, the earth, and new seeds of relationship, nurture, and community, and the intimate and universal dialectic of love. I have a friend, and she is a Buddhist practitioner, and she's been practicing a long time at Dharma Rain, and she actually went to school for art, and she never pursued it. She said, well, what do we really need this for? And she became a physical therapist, and she's really good at it, and interested in yoga, and those things were right for her too. And then she became sick and with endometriosis, and she had surgeries and 3 years of very, very painful recovery. And for some reason, she owns some of my work, my serpents and my owls. And for some reason, she really wanted to do art. I think she's wanted to all along and somehow just never sat down and did it. And she made these pieces, and I know that they are hers, and I know that they are wonderful. And I can't say why, but it gave me the intuition that this was a really important thing to do, for her to do. She worked in ceramics because she likes more three-dimensional things. And I knew she was okay. I live in Eugene, she's up in Portland, I haven't seen her, but I knew she was okay. And I knew that this was as important for her healing as surgeries and medications and the other things that we mostly move towards. So I can't really explain why, but it really confirmed to me something important, in pursuing some kind of creative life that is welling up inside of us. The artist communicates a vital need for genuine creative expression. The arts are central to the discovery of one's true self, this life of our true person, in periods of crisis and great impact, and in smaller transitions as well. So Marguerite Porete, and I would just say that Marguerite Porete was a mystic, and she was a forerunner to Meister Eckhart. And we all know, well, those of us who look for these things know the name of Meister Eckhart, who was very influenced by her writings and her work. So I just wanted to say that because most of us have never heard of Marguerite Porete. She's a French medieval poet, mystic, and beguine. begines a holy woman, a medieval woman gathering to practice the virtues, to share and speak of their love for the divine and perform acts of charity. Like the clergy, beguines made vows of poverty, although they could retain ownership and they could return to a life with a husband. Most beguines served as nurses to care for the sick and poor. They worked as teachers, or they made cloth and lace. Many of these women were unattached, unwanted daughters, therefore suffering some socioeconomic disadvantage. Many wanted to become nuns, yet not being of noble birth, were denied entrance into established Catholic religious orders. Numbering as many as 50 or 70 women, training in community, most were diligent and true in their practice, yet they prayed without the sanction of the church. Most of the great female medieval mystics come from beguinages. They ask in a simple and direct manner, what do I feel? What do I know as myself in myself? This life as my promise to the beloved, this expression of my absolute love. They lived and wrote from the depth of their hearts, beyond social convention and outside the conventions of the church. Beloved, what do you want of me? I contain all that was and that is and that shall be. I am filled with the all. Take of me all you please. If you want all of myself, I shall not say no. Tell me, beloved, what do you want of me? I am love, who am filled with the all. What you want, we want, beloved. Tell us your desires nakedly. Marguerite Porete was burned at the stake in 1310 for her refusal to retract her writings, unwilling to utter a single word of apology or explanation to her inquisitors, the none-willing, none-having, none-thinking, none-knowing, teaching us to trust the interior abyss and teaching us to trust ourselves. For Marguerite Porete, it is the Inquisition, her 18-month discernment period prior to her death, strengthening her resolve, fleshing out her experience of the One. The challenge, the vehemence of the enemy and of our own, once withdrawn, gives us potency to recognize, feel, see the One, emptiness and phenomena. We build strength to acknowledge and say no to extraneous thought and fear, to see that it has no permanent substance. The soul, said love, does not take account of shame or honor, of poverty or riches, ease or unease, love or hate, hell or paradise. If anyone were to ask such free souls, if they were to wish to be in paradise, they would say no. Besides, with what would they wish it? They have no will at all. And if they were to wish for something, that would mean severing themselves from love. To acknowledge the ultimate simplifies the heart. To Marguerite, an act of pure love. Bottomless, infinite, empty, and yet our true home. These women wrote in response to their lives, which in Buddhist practice is essentially empathy, the one in the many in the one. It is sameness in sameness, in its sameness and difference it is. Layla, poet and mystic from Kashmir in northern India, lived during the 14th century. She was married at 12, ill-treated in her marriage. Her husband ignored her. Her mother-in-law deprived her of dignity and sustenance and was cruel. Throughout this time, she remained patient, faithful, and uncomplaining. She left in her early 20s to study with a master of the Shivite order, and that's Shiva. Shiva is part of the trio Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Shiva dancing his dancing his dance of death and rebirth, to absorb within himself the dark, invisible round of interconnectedness. Upon completion of her training, she wanders naked or semi-naked, dancing, singing her verses throughout Kashmir. She is a beloved poet who speaks to the people and encourages the people to sing, and so they listened and sang. And her poems express a psychological clarity and severity combined with depth and devotion. She is a favorite poet of mine, unconventional in custom and expression, original, one's original mind resonating through, one's natural rhythm, stay, do not run, feet step firmly upon the ground, of an inner and personal integrity, solitary and yet not alone. Person, with a capital P, speaks to her rich black alizarin marrow of blood and bone, her rich black red marrow of root and heart, passionate with longing in my eyes, searching, wide and seeking, the night, the day, light low. I behold the truthful one, in my own house fills my gaze. Playfully you hid from me, all day I looked, and then I discovered I was you, and the celebration of that began. Mirabai, mystic and poet, born in Rajasthan in northern India in 1498. Without the energy that lifts mountains, how am I to live? Many early poets become legends through their poetry and their unconventional lives, but also because of the lack and attention to accurate historical information. I think the legend is quite nice. Mirabai created poetry dedicated to Krishna, the Dark One, for whom she waited, prayed, danced, and sang. Encouraged by her example, the people wrote poetry, and they danced and sang. She was revered and raised to be a saint. She found her life through her devotion to Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, a god of love and mercy. Mirabai, the daughter of nobility, married off to a prince, into a family of position and of great wealth and power. Yet her husband, father, and father-in-law all died within a period of 3 years. The city of Rajasthan being fragmented, suffering from continuous infighting between small princes and principalities. Mira questioned a world which seemingly cared little for justice, peace, or for one another. Instead, fostering a concern for oneself and one's ambition. Her devotion to Krishna deepened. She spent most of her days receiving spiritual teachings or performing acts of devotion and prayer. Her family was displeased, attempting to poison, torment, and keep her life restrained. Eventually, she left the palace and renounced her worldly wealth and status. My friend, I went to the market and bought the Dark One. You claim by night, I claim by day. Actually, I was beating a drum all the time I was buying him. You say I gave too much, I say too little. All I was doing was breathing. Something has reached out and taken in the beams of my eyes. There is a longing, it is for his body, for every hair of his dark body. All I was doing was being, and the dancing energy came by my house. His face looks curiously like the moon. I saw it from the side smiling, and my family says, don't ever see him again, and they imply things in a low voice. But my eyes have their own life that laugh at rules and know whose they are. I believe I can bear on my shoulders whatever you want to say of me. Mira says, without the energy that lifts mountains, how am I to live? And a dream of marriage In my dreams, the Great One married me. 4,000 people came to the wedding. My bridegroom was the Lord Brajanath, and in the dream all the doorways were made royal, and he held my hand. In my dream he married me, and fortune came to me. Mirabai has found the great snake Giridhar. She must have had done something good in an earlier life. Not to count on anything, through myriad acts of love and devotion, devotion as the restorative deed, to follow the inner directive, the true self in the guise of the all-embracing lover. Mirabai, like a wandering mendicant, wandering fields and forests without a home, calling Krishna the blue black, the dark one, and singing. Like the wine-drenched ecstatic god, the duende, calling the women out into the night with his flute, not saying what is expected to be said, calling the people into a subtle rapture, one with their hearts full, one with great generosity and forgiving, for that is when the lover approaches, opening the heart as wide as the moon, translucent, illumined, yet intimate with shadow and the wild. We say we like the wild, to touch the ultimate endless azure, blue, green of oceans and of skies, but to allow something or someone to be slightly out of sorts, things falling out of place. Do we appreciate this place of surprise, of a Buddha or a God's space, entering the deep beneath the feet with quiet adventure, wild and beautiful? How crazy these words, not one, not two, not believing the negative conditioned concepts, percepts, and feelings that attempt to ensnare us, that there is nothing outside or separate, especially during meditation, but throughout our day as well. Much of our habituated expectations, thoughts, and emotions coming up in the mind are without basis, yet they are not without reason or without spiritual function. I personally appreciate the darkness, opening into deepening resonance, keeping me fresh and on the alert. I appreciate difficult feelings as they contribute to an ability to stay with the world, rooted and grounded. We need our failures and mistakes. We need the many ways we are. It is not meaning that creates an issue, but the fixed and single meanings we arbitrarily assign. Challenging circumstances and trying people encourage our trust. They are why it matters, our impetus to listen and to learn to love deeply and well. The should and should nots, not good enough, too good, not old enough, young enough, big enough, or smart enough, for whom, for what? Can we investigate and relinquish this one step at a time, feet firm upon the ground, to walk bravely? I'm making a mess with the water, so anyway, so it's all rings. Anyway, Sun Per, mystic and teacher, considered one of the 7 Taoist immortals. Born in 12th century China, her name means clear and calm, a free human being. Her life and history absorbed into fable and folklore. In China today, she is the subject of many novels and plays. Sun Per was married and had 3 children. She did not begin a singular and focused practice in the Tao until she was well into her 50s. Her husband had begun his Taoist studies with Master Wang Zhe. Upon having a dream in which the great master visited and carried them both away, Sun and her husband became Taoist adepts, studying with Wang Zhe, founder of the Pure Serenity School. The Pure Serenity sect approved of practice of remaining immersed in daily life to complete one's obligations as a householder before withdrawing from the world. Sun Per expresses the movement of nature, her nature, and transformative process in a series of 14 poems. The relic from before birth enters one's heart one day. Be as careful as if you were holding a full vessel. Be as gentle as if you were caressing an infant. The gate of earth shut tight. The portals of heaven first opened. Wash the yellow sprouts clean, and atop a mountain is thunder shaking the earth. The beginning of sustenance of life is all in yin and yang. The limitless can open up. The light of the great limit, diligently polished the mirror mind, is bright as the moon. The universe in a grain may rise or it may hide. Merging with the great limit, the state of unity before word, feeling, and or form. Nothing other than a tiny darkness opening into awareness. The great happiness free to be with our life, with other lives, to meet whatever is happening with natural grace. Finding our capacity to recognize the noumenon, to sit in a posture of stillness and composure, yet vibrant and alive. There is no conflict between letting things be and a self that functions. What I like about the possibility in the artist in ourselves is that he or she points us wholly toward the elixir of word, color, gesture, and image, and yet behind to something more. The stuff of the shadow, dream, and our world. This is word and image as our whole life, transparent and beyond the limited self, as the expression of no thing in silence and interconnection in oneself, and as it is in things, that we are originally one, felt as profound change, a whole life dropping off body and mind. Faith is the act of permission, a recognition of one's natural mind, this something more. In truth, there is nothing to know, and yet we do know as we experience this each moment now, this vast leaping over, stepping back, and then stepping forward as our original vow. Emily Dickinson, poet and recluse, her letter to the world. Emily Dickinson was born in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. She spent most of her adult years living with her family in the house her grandfather built. As she grew older, she rarely left the house except for intermittent written correspondence and had few visitors or true friends. Yet living and writing in her own way, she is fiercely independent and profoundly connected. And I love this so much. A vastness as a neighbor came, a wisdom without face or name, a peace as hemispheres at home, and so the night became. Her father was a prominent lawyer with a distant and Puritan disposition. She remained close to her brother Austin, who was married and practiced law. Both she and her younger sister Lavinia lived in the house together. Both remained unmarried. Lavinia was more outspoken, less scholarly in inclination, and very protective of her sister. Emily spoke of her mother as colorless, living in the shadow of her husband. The infinite, a sudden guest, has been assumed to be, but how can that stupendous come that never went away? Wild nights, wild nights, wild nights should be our luxury. Futile the winds to a heart and port, done with compass, done with chart. Rowing in Eden, ah, the sea, might I but moor tonight in thee. The myriad ways we say, for whom are we, for what or where? Our presence as Buddha, all presence as Buddha, which does not mean things go as we would like. What did the Buddha mean by earth as witness? to meet experiences silently marked by grace, our lives influenced by other lives, and yet not comparable. The poems of Emily Dickinson are expressive of a conversion experience, by her own admission brought on by crisis, possibly an erotic crisis, and stimulating the work of oneself. My business, stated Emily Dickinson, in one of her letters, is circumference. And I was the old road. It was the old road through pain, that unfrequented one. The ultimate, things as it is, light and peace which liberates and gives light, hidden within the potential of our own death, moment by moment, or as the great transition is, a wisdom fundamentally that we are one, and that nothing dies, and that every time you are caught by what you know is being caught, and you acknowledge that and let it go, you really learn how to face your own death and loss, to face the fact of our own death and loss without fear, or whatever is your poison is to dissolve a self, caught up in the illusion of separateness. Through practice, we experience this oneness as actual and not hypothetical, when we truly recognize this as our body, the body of the world, this Buddha body, we have, so to speak, arrived. For would it not be that our voice among the trees, mountains, the rivers, and clouds would somehow bring to grace? That's my talk for today. And we have time for a few questions. And this should bring up lively conversation. So,
Shin'ei, thank you so much for bringing those words and creative hearts forward. I'm wondering, especially with the language of beloved and that sort of mystical immersion in the, eros of devotion, how you understand that kind of very dyadic relationship to also be non-dual. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think it actually is non-dual, in its totality it is non-dual. At this level of practice where there no longer is, too much, too little, it is like what we mentioned in the Huayan, the water, and it is the whole of things, and yet, somewhat, I experience as somewhat apart from things, not separate but apart. So it is in every sense non-dual. And, it's kind of like, something comes up and I am, for a moment, I could get caught in something negative and difficult, and then I remember the breath, and then I rest, with the breath. The breath holds me, and I rest within the abyss. So I could call that, this sense of love, or being with the lover. So it is all one, as I experience total communion. So I don't know if that explains it.
Well, I've often thought about this because I'm drawn to that language of the beloved and that sort of very monotheistic. It doesn't have to be monotheistic. As the Indian poets bring forward, it can be polytheistic. It can be all sorts of things, but in the West, we identify it often with, there's...
this being.
This being up there, and then how,
But I would say for me, when I am caught up, I am a theist. When I let go, then I am one with all beings. And not only that, when I am able to stay and give time to things that I have worked with for years, that I know are troublesome, and surely I have had so much experience, caused trouble and messes, all around me with other people. And when I can wait and step back, and it is in a miraculous way cleared away, and I step forward the next day or momentarily. It's as easy as that, and I just step forward and continue with my life. So, I just know this and sense this as an experience. And I know this because we are one with all things, because, the Spirit is what is moving through us and seeing and smelling and touching. Because of that, I can step outside of a very narrow confine of something that I have learned, either what I think of myself, what others think of me, you know what I mean, that relative, comparative world and life, into just this deep sense of peace, and everything is okay. It really is okay. And I don't have words, but it is innate, and because it is awareness and innate, then it belongs to us, and we can trust that. And so to my mind, when I look at the other end, I'm not a very romantic person. I really don't like, talk about love very much, but to my mind, this is our relationship with this difficult other, or this sense of otherness, an otherness that is, in some way antithetical within me. And that's how I relate to it. And it has nothing to do with, a God outside or anything outside that's telling me what to do or how to do it. And yet I am in the world and I'm listening to things. I don't say, well, I'm not going to stop at the stop sign. I do. But somehow the stop sign doesn't hurt me the way some things can hurt me. But, I just, again, it's really this nature of the world, how we live together in society, how we are entangled with each other in very difficult ways. And that's really what we're working with and looking to, resolve in ourselves and to share with other people. So it's not a small problem, but I just know this, this sense of love as a total communion, and not necessarily with a literal being, So, it's like, we love our teacher, but not necessarily, what I mean? What is it that we really love? Something, that I'm sharing, that something is part of me and I am part of this something. So this one, this original one, that deceptively looks like we're all different, and we are, and yet we're not. So I don't know if that's helpful, so anyone else? I'm watching the time. We have a few minutes.
Shin'ei, something that really struck me in your talk, you had a line, you said, something that this is paraphrasing, you said, I realize that you are me, and that is where the celebration begins. And something that really struck me in your talk is the feeling of the closeness of this ancestry of woman seekers, like really feeling the closeness in my own breath of you and of these writers. What is, in a sense, maybe this is just the exact same question as Myoboom's, but what is the relationship between that deep-seated recognition of the heritage of the female archetype and individual females who've lost their lives, and then how one's own voice of poetry and of art comes through as themselves?
I think because everything is originally one in ourselves, and so, we are always okay, and we just don't know that we're okay. And I think that she knows that I am you is that she recognizes her Buddha nature. And this is an Indian poet. She knows that I am that, and she's searching, and suddenly she realized that it is the very thing that she is. So that's how I relate to that, So, in terms of, I'm not sure everything about your question, but the archetype, I don't know, just this emptiness, It's empty, but it's not, it's empty, but it's not nothing. So Prajnaparamita would be a good example for our tradition, of a clear sense of the feminine. And when you rest in Prajnaparamita, you are resting with all beings. You are sitting, when you come to meditation, you are sitting with all beings, and and there's nothing that's separate. When you're meditating, nothing actually is separate or outside you. Nothing actually is inside or outside. It's the rising of a conditioned self that makes the separation. If you watch carefully, you will notice that. So it is that letting go. That letting yourself die, this small self, And I can't tell you, I'm always amazed that I walk into the same mess over and over again, or the same possible, scenario over and over again, and that waiting and stepping back, where was I? It's just, kind of amazing, And I think when we disentangle this conditioned place that we have learned either in a past life, if you believe that, or in your present life, or in your daily life, when we disengage that, it seems to me that the process is innate to us and unravels in itself. And again, it doesn't mean that everything goes the way you want it to go. It is beyond that, and that's why renunciation is very difficult. That's why we don't do it. You know what I mean? Because we're insistent on buying into, so many things that go on in, your discriminating mind, or kleshas, that seem so believable. So you develop this through practice, you develop enough strength that when it is essential, you can really stay put and see that, it is very different from what you have thought. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, we really need to learn, especially in the feminine, personal and interpersonal, better ways of working with one another and living with one another. It's really not up for grabs anymore. It's something we all need to do. So,
Shin'ei.
yeah, and this will be the last one because somebody will be very upset with me if I go over time.
What time is it right now?
It's 11:35.
Okay.
All
We're
right.
5 minutes over now.
Okay.
Well, just briefly, I heard you say in the beginning, plant a garden in your belly. And I'm thinking about the grounding that it takes to witness what you're witnessing between existence and non-existence, right? And I'm thinking about the spiritual gifts of madness, which probably a lot of these women were seen as in their lives, whether they were burnt at the stake or whether people are given psychotropic meds and put into institutions and stigmatized today. Grounding, so that one can experience that or live that, be that, but yet still stop at the stop sign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but because you're grounded, you're better going to stop at the stop sign. That's my point. If you're not grounded, you may miss the stop sign. Or you may think you shouldn't stop because who wants to listen to,
What pulls you back? Practice?
Practice pulls me back, and experience with the practice, meditation, study, precept, practice, karma relationship, working with people, and that's what pulls me back. It keeps me waiting and trusting, not only in me, but in this other person, who's also just like me. So.
Gotcha.